So today, we're diving into the really chilling case of Joseph Paul Franklin. This was a man who for 3 straight years crisscrossed America on a self-declared mission of hate. He left this trail of murder and violence that completely baffled investigators and just terrified communities. This is the story of the hunt for a ghost who left a very real trail of terror.
Our story starts on a warm summer night in 1980 in Salt Lake City. You got 4 young friends walking home after a jog in Liberty Park. All of a sudden, the peace is just shattered by these sharp, cracking sounds. One of the survivors later said she thought they were just firecrackers, kids messing around. It was only when her friends suddenly crumpled to the ground that she knew this was something deadly serious. The victims were Ted Fields, he was 20, and David Martin, just 18 years old. Both of them shot and killed by a sniper who was hiding in the darkness across the street. For the police, this crime made absolutely no sense. These were good kids. No enemies, no criminal records. There was just no motive at all. So why them, and why here?
But here's the thing investigators had no way of knowing at the time. This seemingly random act of violence in Utah, it was just one small piece of a much, much bigger and more terrifying puzzle. This single case would end up triggering a massive nationwide manhunt for a new kind of phantom killer, what law enforcement would later start calling a traveling serial killer.
So how do you even start hunting a ghost like this? Well, it all came down to good old-fashioned police work, and frankly, a few lucky breaks. Investigators checked every motel in the area and found a trail of registration cards, all with fake names, but all with the same distinctive handwriting. Then a message comes in from the FBI. They've connected the murders in Utah to another sniper attack on 2 boys back in Cincinnati. But the biggest break? It came from a motel owner who was so worried about guests stealing pillowcases that he'd go out every single night to double-check their license plates. And what do you know? He had corrected the fake plate on the suspect's registration card, giving police the real Kentucky plate number for that very distinct Camaro. And that was the turning point. Police tracked the car to the guy who'd sold it in Kentucky, and he gave them a sketch of the buyer. At the same time, a witness back in Salt Lake City gave them a sketch of a man she'd met who drove that exact car. And when investigators put those 2 sketches side by side, wow, they were almost identical. After weeks of hunting a complete phantom, they finally had a face. That face belonged to a man named Joseph Paul Franklin. And once they had a name and a face, the investigation shifted from who did this to the far more disturbing question, why? To even begin to understand the why, you have to know that he wasn't born Joseph Paul Franklin. His birth name was James Clayton Vaughn Jr. He grew up in an abusive home, and then at age 26, he legally changed his name. And who did he choose to honor? American revolutionary Benjamin Franklin, and, chillingly, Hitler's chief of propaganda, Joseph Goebbels. He was literally building an identity based on his hateful ideology. And there was no mystery to his motive. In his own words years later, his reasoning was just horrifyingly simple. When they asked him why he killed those 2 teenage boys in Cincinnati, he said this: "I was trying to get rid of all the ugly people in the world. I considered the blacks the ugliest people of all. This wasn't about money. It wasn't about revenge. It was about extermination."
Now, he didn't develop this kind of hatred in a vacuum. He actually went looking for it. He joined the Ku Klux Klan, the American Nazi Party, but over time, he got frustrated. He thought these groups were all talk and no action. He decided that if a race war was going to start, he would have to be the one to fire the first shots. He decided to become a lone wolf.
And the violence he unleashed, was just staggering. Between 1977 and his capture in 1980, Franklin waged a one-man war across the entire United States. He would later be officially linked to the murders of more than 15 people in at least 11 different states. And honestly, that number is probably higher. He would just drift from state to state, robbing banks to fund his so-called mission, and then use a sniper rifle to hunt his victims. Just look at this timeline of terror. He bombed synagogues. He shot and paralyzed hustler publisher Larry Flynt, all because he featured an interracial couple in his magazine. He targeted and shot civil rights leader Vernon Jordan. And of course, he murdered those joggers in Salt Lake City. His targets were always the same: black people, Jewish people, and interracial couples, who he called an abomination. Okay, so Franklin is eventually caught, he's convicted, and he sits on death row for decades. You'd think the story's pretty much over, right? Well, just before his execution, the whole thing takes one of the most bizarre and unexpected turns you can imagine.
Really think about this for a second. If someone shot you, put you in a wheelchair for the rest of your life, would you ever argue to save their life? It seems impossible, doesn't it?
But that is exactly what happened. In 2013, Larry Flynt, paralyzed by Franklin's bullet for 35 years, publicly argued against his execution. He said it wasn't about forgiveness, it was about principle. He believed the death penalty was just vengeance, not justice, and that the government simply shouldn't be in the business of killing people.
Now, despite Flynt's plea, the execution went forward. And what's wild is that Franklin was never even tried for shooting Flynt, even though he'd confessed to it. He was executed by lethal injection in Missouri for the 1977 murder of Gerald Gordon outside a synagogue, which was one of the very first crimes in his 3-year reign of terror.
So why does a killer from the 1970s still matter today? Well, because the template he created, the lone wolf terrorist, has become a chillingly accurate blueprint for modern domestic extremism.
We hear this term all the time, right? Lone wolf. Well, this is what it means. It's someone radicalized by an ideology who acts completely on their own. And the Department of Homeland Security has said that white supremacist lone wolves are one of the most significant domestic terrorism threats the country faces. Joseph Paul Franklin, he basically wrote the playbook for this.
Even in death, Franklin became a martyr for the cause he killed for. His crimes were glorified in extremist fiction. He was treated like a hero on white supremacist websites. His model of acting alone to try and inspire a wider race war is still promoted by these groups today. It's just this direct, deadly line from hateful words to real-world violence.
And that really leaves us with this final lingering question. Joseph Paul Franklin is gone, but the ideology that drove him, that isn't. He was a ghost in the park, a phantom killer hunted across the country. But the truly haunting part of his story is how the hateful ideas he acted on continue to find new life long after the killer himself is dead.